It's time for cricket. It's time for action. It's time for a little conversation. That is what Cricbuzz Live brings to you. And what is the match we have in store for you today? Because they tend to come thick and fast. It's purple taking on orange. And it comes to you from the Wankhede Stadium. Let's give you a quick reminder of the match that's coming up. This is Kolkata taking on Hyderabad. Yes, there it is. Match number 25. A couple of different approaches for the two teams coming in, and we're going to start with that very topic as we welcome our guests on Cricbuzz Live, Joy Bhattacharjya and Michael Vaughan. Gentlemen, first up, we've talked about teams being at the bottom of the table, at the top of the table. Here, the big talking point is Hyderabad, who were firmly rooted at the bottom, are coming off 2 wins. Kolkata after a loss.
Yeah, I mean, I happen to think that at this point in time, Kolkata has just lost that little momentum. And I think more than the defeat, I think what they'll be looking at is saying that they lost by 44 runs. 44 runs is a big margin. And in the conditions that they are in now, the match that they lost, the other interesting thing about it is they lost chasing. And that's not happened very often also in this particular year of IPL, though things have got a little bit better in the last few days. But they've lost chasing, and they would think that, the Kolkata game plan is normally to strangle people early with spin in the middle overs, get them to 150, 160 and chase it down. And that game plan didn't work. And I think that would worry them a teeny little bit.
Well, you're striking a raw nerve with Michael Vaughan there, because every time we've had a game where the usual thing, win the toss, ask the opposition to bat, and the opposition has put runs on the board, Michael, you're like, well, I told you so. Shouldn't they have batted first?
Yeah, good afternoon. In an afternoon game, I think you've got to look at both options. At night time, I think it's always the sensible option to be chased with the potential chance of dew coming down. Two sides that have done okay. KKR obviously started well. They lost the last game, but they're doing okay. I think there's a few areas of slight concern, but the Sunrisers for me just don't have a good enough squad this year. But with Kane Williamson in charge, you just know they will probably produce performances above their stations, and so far in the last 2 games in particular they were excellent, just manoeuvring their seamers nicely. A big loss for them is Washington Sundar today, the spinner. So I'd be interested to see how Kane Williamson manoeuvres that attack, that batting lineup, with Kane himself being Mr. Consistent, then the likes of Trivedi, and then obviously Nicholas Purana, who's been playing nicely in the last few games. They're very dangerous, and particularly when they're chasing, which they are doing this evening.
Yeah, let's actually have a look at where the two teams stand, since Michael mentioned about them not doing too badly. We've had a couple of games where we've been trying to prop up teams desperately. So Hyderabad's only played 4, remember, 1 less than most of the other teams. So they will have completed 5 today. They could potentially get to 6 points. And there's a huge logjam of teams on 6. Kolkata, if they win, have the incentive of going up to 8 points and joining Gujarat there. However, Joy, if they were to lose, the way the net run rate is stacked up, they'll probably come sliding down like snakes and ladders by at least 4 places.
Yeah, look, at this point in time, what happens early days in the table is you'll see a lot more movement, because teams are literally 1 or 2 games apart. There's a logjam of teams at 3-2 and 2-2. So lots of teams, 5-6 teams are sitting in that middle area, and a couple of teams will begin to break away at the top, which hasn't happened as yet. Rajasthan's also gone and lost. Couple of teams are going to break away at the bottom. Already the breakaway at the bottom has started. I mean, Mumbai Indians is looking down the barrel. At least Chennai now has won 1, but Hyderabad has just separated themselves from the bottom 2 at this point in time. But expect a lot of results. This is the time when results will change every day. Okay. And then towards the end of the tournament, it'll start stabilizing again. So yeah, I expect a lot of movement up and down. This is when, if teams hold their nerve, they're going to sort of start cementing places in the semi-finals.
Yeah, with just pure mathematics, you'll tell yourself 1-2, lost to 50% record. Nothing really we can judge yet. But the one thing that we can say is that they're going to miss a certain Washington Sundar. Impactful in the power play with his bowling. When he had a chance to bat, he hit it out of the park. That is going to be a true loss for them. And this will be confirmed in their lineup after winning the toss. Good news for Hyderabad. Winning the toss, asking Kolkata to bat first. They've had to make this one change, Michael. Fortunately, everything else is intact. Rahul Tripathi recovered from his little mishap the other day. But Jagadish Suchit comes in trying to play a similar sort of all-rounder role as Washington Sundar. Tough shoes to fill.
Yeah, tough shoes, but again, no surprise with a Kane Williamson side that they go like for like. He's quite happy with the way that they're playing the last two games, so he doesn't want to really change up the system. That's exactly what Kane Williamson does as a captain. He gets used to a certain group of players and a certain system, and he pretty much stays within that. They're a decent side. I'm interested with a few things this evening. I mean, first and foremost, I think being in the field and chasing, it's going to suit the Sunrisers. Their batting lineup are full of confidence. They're still a side that you think if they're chasing anything 160 to 185, you fancy anything beyond that, you'd probably be a little bit concerned with the way that they play. But that kind of number, Kane Williamson is quite happy for the opposition to get that score, and then he'll back himself to manoeuvre his position and play nicely and let one or two cameos happen around him. A real key matchup tonight is Bhubaneswar with that new ball. Can he get it swinging around? I think he has been indifferent. He's had good spells, but he's been a little bit indifferent. They're a very interesting team. I said a couple of games ago when they're not won that I just don't see them having any say in the final stages of the IPL. And then I thought to myself, wait a minute, Kane Williamson's the captain. And he just seems to have this knack of getting that 10, 15% out of players that not many other leaders can do. So you can't really rule them out yet.
And add to that the support staff, Joy. There's, I think, more big names in there, not necessarily as in terms of numbers as many as Mumbai, but certainly in terms of big names, they would be number one.
Yeah. I mean, Dale Steyn, Brian Lara, Muralidharan. I mean, what more do you expect? I mean, 3 of the finest ever. I mean, it's an unbelievable. The other thing is, all are very, very calm guys off the field. I mean, you look at Muralidharan and wonder in his playing days and wonder if he's calm, but he's extremely calm and extremely relaxed off the field. And I think that helps because I don't think Kane Williamson looks at the game like that of, okay, we are all going to go there and kill. It's a much calmer feeling. He captains more with it's a thoughtful captaincy rather than an aggressive captaincy. But that doesn't mean that he can't get his results. He's for New Zealand. He's shown more often than not that how he can actually motivate guys to play better for him without actually putting pressure on them. And I think that's something Williamson does really well.
Mm.
But in terms of the opposition, this was the only forced change for Hyderabad. Kolkata were not forced to make any changes other than the fact that they had the option of Australian white ball captain Aaron Finch to possibly come in there. They've taken that option. And because of that, because of the balance on the side and Sam Billings being there, they've been forced to make one more change. So Sheldon Jackson comes in and dons the gloves. Out goes Sam Billings. Aman Khan comes in for Shivam Mavi. And Aaron Finch, Michael, replaces, I beg your pardon, he comes in for Rasik Dar. And Aaron Finch is replacing Ajinkya Rahane. How does that 11 look to you on paper, Michael?
Oh, I think Finch is more of a style of player at the top of the order that someone like Baz McCullum would prefer. Ajinkya Rahane is a fine player, stroke player, but he's not quite been coming out of the blocks, which I think Baz McCullum would hope his opening batters to be able to do so. But I mentioned Bhubaneswar Kumar. It's an interesting matchup with Bhubaneswar bowling to Aaron Finch because Finch doesn't have a great record against Bhubaneswar Kumar, so it'd be interesting to see how that matchup takes place. Look at that, Bhuvi versus Finch in 1 day in 2019. He bowled 59 balls, 45 dots, and had him out 4 times. And I don't know officially, but I would say those 4 times were probably LBW because that big left pad seems to get in the way of the ball on a few occasions from Aaron Finch. And that's what they'll do this evening. They'll try and target that front pad, probably bowl a couple of outswingers and then one bringing back into those pads. So that's an interesting matchup. It's interesting for Aaron to come and get his first kind of chance, and he's up against one of his nemesis. So it'd be interesting to see how he goes in the first couple of overs.
Yeah, and as far as obviously getting Sheldon Jackson back, they had to balance out the side because of the overseas options, Joy. But one new name we'll be seeing for the first time. I remember sitting in the auction when Aman Khan was picked up, Joy. It was funny because one of the guys in the social media team for Kolkata, his name is also Aman Khan. So we almost thought it was a prank because they were going, they suddenly started bidding for Aman Khan, and we're looking, is there something you haven't told us? And the guy's going, well, all right. And then I remembered suddenly it was a guy, an all-rounder who also hits the ball pretty hard. I'd seen at Mumbai T20. So unknown quantity in a sense, might just be thrown in against Hyderabad.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's no spring chicken. He's 26 years old. He's played a little bit for Mumbai, a little bit of Mushtaq Ali, a little bit of List A matches. The interesting thing about him is he's a pretty useful batsman as well. So, I mean, batting is really known to be his first, his first skill. Therefore, you're going to get that batting order is going to look a little bit more solid, and therefore, probably McCullum can do even more of what McCullum likes doing, which is like playing with the batting order and putting it. Aman Khan, I would expect him to bat at 3, 4, 5. He's the kind of guy they can promote that high. He really is a hard hitter of the ball. The other interesting part about it is, though they probably didn't know it at that point in time whether he's called up after the knock, Shreyas Iyer is a really good friend of Aman Khan. They've played their cricket together. They've started a lot of their cricket together under Praveen Amre was with Aman Khan, which means that Shreyas knows exactly what he's capable of doing and has seen his skills for a very long time, and that's really important for the player. If the coach or the captain know what you're all about, really, really helps. So I'm sure Shreyas Iyer would have said, what, give this guy a chance. I know how hard he can hit the ball. He would have made his case.
Yeah, in fact, Shreyas was one of the captains in that very tournament that I spoke about. And if I recall right, he was in Shreyas Iyer's team. So either way, he would have known him well coming through the system. So interesting matchups, Michael, as you mentioned, all looking forward to watching Bhuvi versus Aaron Finch. But just to stay on Finch for a moment, overall, he's not the kind of, with the potential that he hasn't set this tournament alight.
No, and I guess that's potentially to do with the wickets that are slightly different in India to what he has in Australia. I think left-arm spin has been a bit of an issue as well. Off-spin he whacks. Anything that's coming back into the pads in terms of spin, he really can take that apart. But India's a funny play, and I just think it's pressure as well. The IPL is such a pressure zone for these players. Doesn't matter how experienced you are. If you have one or two iffy performances, it builds inside. You're so desperate to do well as an individual that sometimes you can possibly want it too much. When you're playing and you're captaining your international side, you're playing every game, so you can relax and play. In an IPL system, it doesn't really matter who you are, particularly from the overseas section. If you have 2 bad games, forget your price tag, there's a chance you're going to be dropped. Where if you have 2 bad games for your national team, you pretty much know you're going to have a few more games to get back into form. IPL sides generally don't allow you too much time to get back into form. You have to deliver from probably the first few games that you play. And Aaron will know that he'll get a couple of games to get into the groove of things, but he'll know he'll need to score quite soon, because if not, it's just it's the rotating chair. You don't stay on it very long if you don't get too many runs.
Yeah, and that's the trouble, Joy, of being the kind of player Finch is. There are some players who, by nature, take time to settle down so they can settle down in a tournament. But Finch, as the record suggested, but also let's remind everyone, Joy, he was not originally picked in the auction. Alex Hales pulled out, and then Aaron Finch was the next choice.
Yeah. I was absolutely delighted because Aaron Finch, for most people following the IPL, is a quiz question rather than a cricketer. Because this is the 9th franchise he's actually playing for. 9th franchise. So all I want to say, in the first 14 years of the IPL, 8 franchises have given up on him. And look, that's no reflection of him as a guy and as a...
He's due. Be kind,
yeah. He's due. So they say 9th time lucky. Unless he's a cat, he should have a good one here. But 9th IPL franchise, that's quite something, So in fact, the 2 new teams have been told that, if Finchy comes up in the auction next year or whatever, they should put in a bid for him as well, because those are the few guys he hasn't played for. But see, that's the thing. You look down that list. There are few players: Morgan, Finch, Cameron White. All these guys are known as phenomenal T20 batters. None of them have got it done in India, and I've never understood. It's just one of those things that these guys have given enough chances. Everyone knows they do well, and every franchise that buys them thinks that this time they'll turn it around. Just somehow they haven't. One of the mysteries of the IPL.
Yeah, certainly is. But it's going to be Aaron Finch seen in action fairly soon, because Kolkata, even though Shreyas put on a brave face and said, hey, we don't really mind now, they've got to put some runs on the board and maybe just do what Michael said at the start of the show. Hyderabad may not always be a 180, 190 type of side. Get towards that sort of total, make it out of their territory. But he'll be up against Bhuvi, but also up against T. Natarajan, Michael. So up front, always, Hyderabad have looked good with their Indian quick bowlers.
Yeah, they have, and I mean, Natarajan's been excellent in the last couple of games, and he's getting the ball swinging back to the right-handers again. Aaron Finch will be targeted with a ball that's going to come back. That's exactly the angle that you want to try and create against Aaron Finch. A couple of key. He bowls the important overs, the hardest overs. So the economy at 7.5, 8.5 is understandable when you're bowling at the start and towards the back end of an innings. It's wickets that you look for. I look at my opening bowlers. Can you get wickets? And that's what he has managed to do in the last couple of games, getting key wickets at the right time. And I think for the Sunrisers to win and consistently win, they need everything kind of to work in place. It's not that just the batting's going to work for them to win them a game. I think everything's got to work. They're not a good enough side just for one or two individuals to rock a bit. It always has to be a collective. And starting with the opening bowling, that they have got two bowlers at the start that can manoeuvre the ball and bowl with a great deal of skill, and they should be full of confidence on the back of the last couple of performances.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of those guys, Joy. Every time we're on the show, we already start looking at potential slots for Australia come the end of the year. Natarajan is somebody who could have already been in contention earlier. He had a few injury issues. But now, can you see him now pushing for a slot?
Absolutely. I see him pushing because, again, for all the bowlers that we have, we don't have really good death bowlers. I think most of our bowlers are more suited to bowling up. Even Shami doesn't like bowling at the death. So if you take somebody like a Shami, you need guys who can bowl it. So what is Natarajan doing now for Hyderabad? You see what he's doing. He's bowling one up front in the top 6. They're bowling him one there. One in the middle. They bring him back in the middle for one. And then he bowls those two very important overs the death. Anyone bowling 2 overs the death, 7.5, as you know, Michael said, is a great 7.5, 8.5. It really doesn't matter. But I think one of the things that might just suit Aaron Finch is they bowl Marco Jansen up front. And Marco Jansen, if he bowls, he has a disconcerting height and bounce. But I think that's something that Finchy won't mind. Get under the bounce, try and, uppercut him. He'll be far more comfortable against somebody like a Marco Jansen who doesn't really attack the stumps, and rather than people like Bhuvaneshwar Kumar and Natarajan. In fact, it'll be really interesting, Michael, if they look at that and they decide that, while Finch is around, maybe give Natarajan the second or third over instead of the 5th or 6th that he normally gets. Because he also gets that ball to shape back. If you remember his first ball in the previous match, first ball was this beauty that just went through KL Rahul. So, that's something that they could definitely look at.
Yeah, I mean, looking at India, I think they'd be silly not to look at him because of the left arm over. I think the angle that the left armers bring, bowling those cutters as well towards the back end of an innings, the pitches are just starting to grip. You can protect certain sections of the ground with left arm over. That's why a lot of the really good T20 teams, like one, if not two, left arm seamers in their attack. So, if I was an India selector, I think I'd be keeping a close eye on him.
Yeah, fair point. There used to be a time, Joy, when we had a profusion of left arm quicks from, you could look at so many of them, be it Zahir Khan, Irfan Pathan, RP Singh, Ashish Nehra. There was plenty of them around and all bowling together at one time. So I think it's an asset to have, and they can have one, pick him, nurture him, get him on that flight. But wonder what all of you think, and which is the one important topic you've picked on to ask us a question pertinent to today's game. Hashtag Ask Cricbuzz Live. Keep those questions coming. Today, this is the one we've picked. And here it is. This is the question that we have coming up for you at some point. There it is. Pravesh. Kolkata have got Shreyas Iyer for his captaincy. But how much will they want him to deliver with the bat, Joy? Obviously, the big talk about the few franchises who didn't quite have a skipper, apart from the 2 new franchises, was the talking point. Kolkata?
Yeah, I think yeah, absolutely. I think they really wanted him. They got him at a very good price because people were waiting, I think, for Ishan Kishan and other players, and he somehow sneaked in. They got him at a very, very good value. The question only is that at that 4 slot, that's the slot where he's done really well for India. He's been finishing for India. He's not out in the 4 games he played. The 3 he was not out, got 50s. Somehow that form he's not getting for Kolkata. I think they'll be telling each other that this is just a matter of time. He's just going to settle in. But he and Venkatesh Iyer not getting consistent runs is something that is going to start bothering Kolkata. So They're going to hope this turns around because these two are very crucial for Kolkata to make a title run. If these two start firing, they already have that tremendous middle order capability that they have, and with Andre Russell out there as well. Now you've added another batsman in Aman Khan, so there's a lot of batting out there in the middle order. The top order just needs to fire a little bit more. Rahane has been disappointing. Okay, they've got rid of him. Now these guys need to deliver.
It's always an interesting conundrum because you have an inspirational leader, as Kolkata did last year in Owen Morgan. No one doubts his captaincy credentials at all. But just for some reason or the other, match after match, he wasn't able to deliver with the bat.
Yeah, but still managed to get to the final because he managed to just manage the people around him. Sometimes captaincy is, of course, you have to perform, but it's about making sure that those around you are very comfortable and know exactly what their roles are, and you're trying to maximise their ability and get them to play to potential and above. And really good captains get those players around him to play just a little bit beyond what they're capable of, and that's what Owen Morgan's been able to do. So I've been impressed by his captaincy. He's a class player. You're only ever one innings away from really starting to fly. And it could be tonight, it could be the next game, but it won't be long before we see a special innings from him. He's too good a player.
Yeah, it certainly is. But for Kolkata fans, Shreyas Iyer, Captain Shreyas Iyer, the batsman, if you gave them a choice, they'd certainly pick the latter to get some runs on the board. Once, of course, the likes of Nitish Rana and maybe Aaron Finch gets off to a good option, it'll be different. We've mentioned many aspects of Hyderabad's bowling. Bhuvi at the top. Of course, they've got Marco Jansen. They've got Natarajan. What they will not have in the power play for sure, Joy, is the option of bowling a Washington Sundar. So they will now have to start looking at different roles. Can Abhishek Sharma play the role he used to play? When he came in, he was looked at much more as a bowling all-rounder who could contribute with the bat. Now he's got a slot for himself as an opener, but they need some spin. They didn't take Shreyas Gopal.
Yeah, they didn't. They took Jagdish Suchit. I think, he will definitely give them something with the ball. He's a experienced Karnataka player, decent bat also. Okay, he's not Washington Sundar, but he gets you something with the bat as well. Look, Abhishek Sharma could be interesting because, again, this Kolkata top order is not settled. They've just made changes. Aaron Finch has just walked in. So don't expect them to be really aggressive up front. If you can sneak in a couple of overs of spin up front, it just will be very useful because that's what typically Hyderabad would like to do. Get a couple of overs. And as I said, Abhishek Sharma, if you haven't faced him as a left armer, he also gives you a little bit of trouble, brings the ball back. Aaron Finch is not the most comfortable against, ball moving away, the left-handing bowler. So it shouldn't, I can't see him going early after them right now, just when he's coming to settle and hoping that finally in his 9th IPL home, franchise, he finally finds a home. He's going to be a little bit nervous.
If I was KKR, I would be saying to the batters, target one of the main bowlers. Target and go really hard at one of them, because if you can dislodge one of the main four, knowing that the fifth bowling option is going to be a bit of a matchup, you can really dismantle that bowling attack. Because if you really target a Kumar, Natarajan, Marco Jansen, and really smash them in their first over, all of a sudden Kane Williamson is starting to go, wait a minute, I've got 4 overs of my fifth option, which I've got to try and find. If I've got another 2 overs of, one of my mainstream having an iffy day, then you've got 6 overs you've got to find. So that'd be the target that I'd be going for if I was KKR. I'd be really trying to target one of those main bowlers.
But having said that, Michael, and I'll stay on you with this one, I think it's a conundrum that both teams have. Because Hyderabad could just as easily return the favor, because Kolkata also have been having a few problems with that fifth bowler. Not quite settled. Let's see if these numbers back up what we're trying to suggest over here. Because these are the fifth bowlers they've used so far. Gone it well in excess of 10 and over, and picked up only 4 wickets in 5 games. And I'm sure they'd look to improve on that. Michael?
Yeah, Andre Russell's a bowler that if his body's able enough, I'd have him down as a better fifth bowler than we're seeing from the Sunrisers. I guess most teams are always looking to find an over or two in a T20 game, but I'd prefer to have Russell as a fifth bowling option than I would have the Sunrisers 3 that we mentioned. But I just think sometimes when you see that a team's struggling for real quality in the bowling attack right through the 20 overs, you're better off attacking a real quality bowler to really dismantle a captaincy's thought. Because what Kane Williamson wants, he wants in his mind, it's already set out that if he could steal one of the fifth bowling options, 1 over in the first 6, if he can then get his 2 from Bhubaneswar, and then he can use a bit of Natarajan, Marky Jansen, then in the middle he wants it played out, and he knows Natarajan's at the back end with Kumar. If you can derail that somewhat and get Kane Williamson having to go away from plan A, you've done something very, very well, particularly when they're struggling for that 5th bowling option. So that's the way I'd be treating the batting side of it from the KKR side. Saying for 1 or 2 players, look, go after X or Y to try and completely dismantle their tactics.
In fact, I would, I mean, wonderful what you said. I completely agree with. Tactically, you have to make decisions. Some of these have to be pre-decided. I would go after Marco Jansen because Jansen, the way he bowls, he doesn't attack the stumps. So one of Finch's biggest problem is the fact of his LBW, the kind of length Jansen bowls. If he bowls even a normal length, it'll all fly over the stumps. So once Finch is not scared of getting that LBW decision against him, what Finch does really well all around the world, except in India for some reason, is he charges the bowler. And which is why McCullum loves him. He just runs at the bowler, disturbs his length and tries to hit him. If Jansen pitches it short, Finch can always, pull it over. But Finch has not got that kind of length which, gets those LBW decisions against somebody like, Jansen doesn't have that kind of length. So, yeah, he's a young kid as well, 19, 20 years old. Hit him a couple of times, and yes, you will give Kane Williamson lots of migraines.
And they're not too dissimilar when you think about it. If you're talking about McCullum and Finch, you close your eyes sometimes, you could well throw back to a time when Baz McCullum was donning the very same colours. He also likes to suddenly shuffle down a couple of steps to a quick bowler and deposit him over mid-wicket. But so maybe 5th bowling problems on both sides. We'll see how it goes with Sundar missing from the Sunrisers lineup. But they are the ones bowling first. Before we get to our predictions of the numbers, Michael, you can start thinking about it already. Till then, your favorite part of the show. Joy, your quiz question for the day on Joy Factor.
Okay. What distinction connects Indian-born keeper batsman Swapnil Patil with a World Cup winning captain who we've discussed in the past half hour? Well, let me put it out there. What distinction connects an Indian-born keeper Swapnil Patil with a World Cup winning captain who we've discussed today? So if you're watching the show, you know what we are talking about.
No more hints. I'm glad you said that. So for anyone who might have squeezed in just to hear your quiz question, it's on the app. Get back on the Cricbuzz app and watch our show all over again. There's an incentive for that if you want a hint from Joy. Meanwhile, I'm going to give Michael another 30 seconds to think about his number while you tell us about what's new on Retro Reels.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah, it's an amazing. This week is a terrific Retro Reels because we have a situation where we have. It's about the Titanic. Because of course, the Titanic is a great story. It sunk around this time. The first ever IPL match. So there's so many things happening out there. Just one of the shows that you just have to watch. There's some terrific stories out there.
Oh, yeah, the Titanic. That was quite something. It all started coming India early in this tournament when everyone was using Titanic to describe the Titans. But today we're not talking about them. We're talking the Sunrisers. We're talking the Knight Riders. Michael, what's your number?
Well, you know my theory, but I've been speaking to my little friends down here, and they don't think the 160 theory will work today. So it said go 175.
Now, that is a departure. If the tech team in the Vaughan house has gone away from 160, that means you've definitely got to go high. So 175, marker's been set, Joy.
Well, I'm going to just... I'm like a tenant who's somebody has vacated some places. I'll just slip in there. 164.
Oh, he's gone from a 160.
Oh dear. I was going to go into that territory. I can't go lower than that. I cannot possibly go lower than that. So then I'm forced to go high. I'll go 180. 180. Just a little bit higher, but it leaves me a window till up to 190. Otherwise, I would have picked. So we've got a range between 160 and 190 pretty much covered. Let's see. In fact, 154 to 190 to be exact. Anything between that, somebody here possibly wins the prediction. 10th over, we'll be back on Cricbuzz Combox Quick reminder, Kolkata batting first after being asked to do so, having lost the toss. We'll see you then. From Joy, Michael and myself, that's all on Cricbuzz Live.